This organization started 3 weeks ago, and it is incredible to see all of you here tonight. So glad to have you all join us. I have been the public face of Independent Indiana thus far, but I'm not the only person on the team. And I want to thank the team members. First of all, Orion McCormick, who is our project support specialist and made everything happen tonight. Can we give him a round of applause? We also have a couple of our board members here tonight. So Amar Patel is here, and also Roger Dietz. Where's Roger? So if you guys could, well, he's already standing, but Roger, could you stand so people could recognize your efforts as well? So we have a special announcement before we get started tonight, and it's really exciting for me to be able to do this. In Indiana, as hopefully you have all heard, independent candidates have been running and winning at rates that are surprising a lot of people. And there have also been efforts around the country to try to form something for people that don't quite feel like the two parties are serving us well. And one of those, a lot of people may have heard of, was the Forward Party, which was founded a few years ago. Another one recently was No Labels. So those are national efforts. And one of the things that they have in common is they had the same national organizing director. This is the person who built the infrastructure for them to form state parties, in the case of the Forward Party, to build out a presidential campaign volunteer team that turned out they couldn't find a candidate, so they didn't ever use it, but built the infrastructure. The person who did those things is here with us tonight. His name is Will Conway, and I am very proud to announce that Will is joining Independent Indiana as our Director of Operations effective today. So I'm going to have Will come up, have a seat next to me here, and tell us why it is you decided to join our little pirate ship.
Pirate ship feels right. I like it. I don't know. We first talked, 18 months ago?
Yes.
Yeah. So everybody, I get a ton of emails from well-meaning people all around the country who are trying to fix things. They don't necessarily know what to do. I'll give an example from an email I got about 2 hours before Nathan emailed me. Somebody said they want to run independent candidates for Congress in 100 seats all around the country. Basic math, $2 million to run a congressional race times 100, you need $200 million. I said, do you have $200 million? He said, I have $8,000. And I said, okay, give me a call in a couple of months. We'll see how it goes. So I get a lot of emails like that. Like, people are just trying their best. So I get this email from, I was connected to Nathan. There was a warm intro from somebody that we both know. And I thought it was going to be a call along those lines. And I get on the call with Nathan, very quickly figure out it's not that same conversation. So one thing I learned at the Forward Party and No Labels, really early on the time that I was at the Forward Party, I thought it was going to be much easier to build a national political party in the purple states, the Pennsylvanias, the Michigans, states of that nature. It actually was the exact opposite. Republican-led, Democratic-led, it actually didn't matter. It was states where there was no competition. It was one-party rule, and most people, even people in that major party, felt completely unrepresented. Indiana is a perfect example of a state that looks like that, because on the national level, people think Indiana is a Republican state, and it is. But as Nathan will point out again and again and again, 52% of independents who run in the state actually win their elections. To be clear, 35% of Democrats win their elections in Indiana. 62% of Republicans win their election.
61. Just want to make sure we get the facts right. Yeah, that's okay. Right. We believe in accuracy at Independent Indiana.
So the reality is, this is a state where people think for themselves. But the politics of the state are not designed to let that happen. There's straight ticket voting. We have closed party primaries. There are a million different things that make it actually impossible For
Not totally closed. People for now, they've been talking about closing the primaries, but we do have. I know. I'm just saying.
semi-closed primaries.
Yes.
Yes. But the reality is, independents in this state can win. Just there's this problem: an independent wins, and then they're independent. By definition, there's no support structure. There's no ability to. There's no campaign apparatus. There's no political infrastructure. There's no money for them to promote themselves to run for higher office. There's no infrastructure for them to. There's no rising of the tide for other independent candidates. So independent Indiana conceptually is built to allow independents to make elections more competitive, and as a result builds an infrastructure in the state to allow for competitive elections where they haven't existed. And I think anybody who's a fan of democracy is a fan of more competitive elections across the state and better candidates. So that's why I'm excited to be here. It's exciting to be in this room, and I'm excited to see this thing taken off. This is pretty cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, so let's meet our panelists. The first panelist is a 26-year state legislator. He was a Republican. He served in the Newcastle area, Lewisville. He retired from the state legislature, decided to run for town council, but he did it as an independent. And because he knows it's good to have a friend on town council, he got a buddy of his to run as an independent as well. They both were elected in 2023. I think he's the most interesting man in Indiana politics. Please welcome Tom Saunders. I'm going to have to get that. Our next panelist comes from Bedford, Indiana. She is the former mayor, elected 3 terms, each as an independent. Please welcome Shawna Girgis. Huntington, Indiana is the home of Dan Quayle. But they don't have a Republican mayor. They have an independent. This independent was a Republican member of the city council. In 2019, he ran as an independent. He won. In 2023, he won re-election again. He's currently in his 2nd term. Please welcome Mayor Richard Strick. So I want to start with each of you telling us how you came to the decision to decide to run and run as an independent. And I'd like to start with Mayor Girgis.
Well, this is a long time ago now, but in 2007, an individual that was unhappy with the election results, the primary election results, we'd had a seated mayor that was unseated by a Republican opponent. They came to me and said, "Would you consider running?" And my initial response to them was no. I said, I did have a 6-month-old child and a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. And I was like, and I loved my job. And so I said no, but my mother had just passed away and she was only 54 at the time. And I had really had the thought, what if I only get 18 more years of living? I want to make an impact. I want to do something that would leave a mark. And so I asked a few people for input, and they actually gave me really bad advice, to be honest. But at the end of that thing, I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to lose. That was my mindset. I'm going to probably lose, but it'd be worth it just to try. And so I did. And yeah, that's how I got started.
All right, Mayor Strick, tell us how you got to the place of running as an independent.
Well, the short version doesn't involve the monk down in Kentucky. I can tell you later about that one. But the more important version is very similar. We had a really well-liked, successful Republican mayor who ran the city as a place where everyone was welcome there. The finances are well-run, services were being provided, things were being improved, and lost in the primary. And my predecessor, his tagline was "For the love of Huntington." And the gentleman that beat him, the night he won in the primary, he posted on social media, "I guess we're done loving Huntington." And that didn't sit well with a 30-something with a remote job and starting to question, why am I here? Why do I stay here, especially with the front row on city council to watch the car go into the tree? But a small group of us began to talk about what if we could do something about this, and eventually threw my hat in the ring, got the signatures, got on the ballot, and ran as hard and as fast as we could through that finish line. And here I am.
Tom, you were in the legislature for a long time. You were a Republican that whole time. When did your journey to becoming an independent really start? When did you first start thinking about being an independent?
I left the legislature in 2023, and the two previous elections before that, I had talked to people and contemplated maybe I want to run as an independent because I felt like my party, was leaving me, and I wasn't happy, but I was advised I don't think you can get elected that way. I honestly think I could have. But anyway, I retired, went home to a small town, and they said, Tom, why don't you run for city council? And I go, I don't want to run for council. I don't even know what party I am anymore. And the state highway was doing a project down the middle of US 40. They had the town divided north and south. And the president of the council got on Facebook and said, if you've got a problem with what's going on, don't call us, call the state. Well, I went down to the city building. I said, that's not the way this works. You need to call the state and get them over here. Get them to the table. We need to find out what the problem is and get this taken care of. And she said, I'm not doing that. And I said, then I'm running for council. And I went down the street and asked a gentleman, I said, I want to run for council. There's 3 Republicans on the council. I can't do this by myself. I think we can work with Richard, but we need to knock the other 2 off. Will you run as an independent? So we did. I led the ticket. Richard came in second, and my guy came in third, so we took over the town. Yeah. So it's a small town, but it's a...
So I want to talk about the challenges running as an independent. And Mayor Girgis, you talked about you didn't even really want to do this. When you finally decided, okay, I'm going to throw my hat in, what did you discover when you started your campaign?
I learned a lot, as you mentioned, really fast. Definitely drinking from a fire hose. Had never been in elected office, had worked with elected officials, but not actually run. So I learned about the signature process, getting how many signatures you needed. I quickly discovered that in itself was quite a challenge. Couldn't do that alone. And found a few people, like probably a handful of people that were excited about the idea of having another option. And people that I knew well enough that they were connected in the community, and at least 1 or 2 of those started talking about this. And so I think people just saw me. They didn't even know I worked, actually, because I didn't work in the city. And so those folks started helping me. And so it was just a fast and furious race, and then all the things that go with it, right? Trying to set up forums, and we did coffee talks in people's houses, and always carrying petitions, of course. Then you were raising money, and then you were, all the things that go with ads. And so it was just, I learned so much in those very first few months. It was really, really unbelievable. It was like education that I didn't know I was going to get.
Was somebody helping you, advising you on what it took to run a campaign?
So very quickly, when I got the signatures I needed, a few influential individuals, in this case, the ones that I really had confidence in happened to be Democrats. I think they knew, at least in my community, that those candidates, actually, I don't even know if there were any, there was one candidate and he was not viable. And so they started giving me advice and information. I had a small, kitchen cabinet meeting, and we met once a week, and I would create a list of tasks to do, and I was about doing them. So, yeah.
I saw you nodding your head when she talked about the excitement when you told people you're running as an independent. Can you talk about that and what you experienced when you let people know, hey, we're going to do this, and I'm going to do it as an independent?
Yeah, so when my predecessor had been beaten, the primary was already a shot across the bow for a lot of us that were concerned with good governance. So there was already a built-in frustration and skepticism about what did we just do? And so being able to harness and tap into that. And one of the secrets that I found was treating it like planning a party. You're going to plan a lot of them. You're going to do a lot of backyard parties. You're going to do, wherever and anywhere. But the key to a good party is that you actually enjoy the party.
Yeah.
Right. And so just inviting people to come to the party and find a role. And so our youngest volunteer was 5 years old. Our oldest volunteer was 87 years old. And we would put them in positions to succeed. And we would give them very simple tasks about inviting their friends. Or if you want to host something in your home and invite 10 people, I'll come talk to them. So I'm doing the lift as a candidate. When we did a campaign headquarters, it was come and do life down there. I don't need you to hand out brochures and everything else. Somebody asked for them, great. Nobody ever asked for them. But if you got to watch the grandkids, bring them there. If you got homework to do, bring it there. If you can come down and play chess with your friends, do it there. And so people would drive by and they would see people inside campaign headquarters laughing, enjoying life. And nobody wants to be on the outside of that party. So yeah, it becomes magnetic that way.
Tom, you've been in the political game for a long time, and you started as a Republican. You worked, on Republican campaigns. You won Republican campaigns. Can you talk to me about how you see things have changed in terms of from the grassroots? When we first spoke, you talked to me about, well, really, I asked you, I said, you live in a Republican area. I would assume that Republicans just want to keep voting for Republicans. Tell me what's really going on from your vantage point.
Well, in Henry County, Republicans dominate the county. In most cases, you don't have anybody for the, did I say that right? The Republicans dominate that. The Democrats really don't have anybody to vote for. So a lot of people only have one choice. And they may not want to vote for the Republican, but there's no other choice. And I was pretty proud of the fact that when I was running, the town of Middletown and the town of Newcastle is heavy Democratically. But when I was in my third term as county assessor, I was carrying Newcastle and I was carrying Middletown. And they're going, Tom, that's not supposed to happen. Well, you got to go out and work with them. You got to hear their side of the story. And a lot of times it's just listening to people. And I was always proud of the fact that I was the Republican county assessor, but the Henry Township, which was Newcastle, township assessor was Democrat. Mildred and I never let politics get in the way in what we were supposed to be doing and what was good for the county. And it just seems like that was getting farther and farther away. When the Democrats walked out of the State House under Mitch Daniels and left the state for 32 days, I understand why they did it, because Mitch would have sent the state police after them, hauled them back in. My first year in the General Assembly, we walked out for 8 days. The state police came after us. They said, hide. We hid behind trees. They saw us, but I had Democrats reaching out to me. I mean, the Republicans fined them, took all their pay for the year. I mean, we treated them very badly. And I said, guys, one of these days that pendulum's going to swing back the other direction. And we I like to work with the people. And I think the worst thing that's happened to the state is a supermajority where we don't hear the other side's concerns. And, but I just think that a lot of times they don't want to vote for Republican either, but they didn't have a choice in the matter. You wanted to vote.
Yeah. So, Shawna, I was speaking to a former lieutenant governor last week, and I told this person what I was doing, and they said, oh, do you know about Shawna Girgis in Bedford? Now, you haven't been in office since 2019. Now, that's a long time in politics. For somebody to still remember you and have such a high opinion of you, you won 3 terms. It's one thing to just win that first race. How are you able to continue winning in an area where, it's not like you had an army of independent volunteers to help you?
I think what Tom said is right. I think listening to people is very important. I also did something that hadn't been done in 25 years. I'm sure these fine gentlemen have done this, but we didn't have any kind of plan moving forward. I think people also, when it's kind of guaranteed, you get a little lazy. So we did a plan, engaged hundreds of people in the community, and then set about doing the things that they said. And so I would get folks that would challenge me. You can't do that. We don't want that. It was typically the guard before, and even sometimes threaten me. You're not going to be here if you do this. And I was like, well, not like physically, but we're going to see to it that you're out of here if you do this. And I was like, okay. And they would always kind of look at me like, what? I'm like, no offense. I didn't get here. I didn't come here or want to do this because of you. I want to do something positive for the community, and my life will not be over if I'm not here next term. They really didn't know what to do with me. They were like, gosh, what do we do with this blonde chick? But as a result, the people that wanted something done were at the table, they were engaged, and we just started getting positive things done. And so every time you are running on your record, like what strides are we making? What things are we getting accomplished? And I think that's why people continued to support me. And I really did everything in my power. I only made a promise if I was like, sure, we could deliver. And if something...
That's so unique for a politician.
Well, I don't know. I was just being myself. So I feel like that, but you do upset people along the way. Let's be honest, but that's kind of part of it too.
Were you hearing from Republicans secretly telling you things that they say, I can't say this publicly, but maybe they were appreciative of what you were doing?
For sure, the first time I ran, yes. But after that, I felt like I was very blessed to have an excellent city council. We had one Democrat, the others were all Republicans, but they all were truly, like you said, they wanted what was best for the community. And they were okay with, they wanted to work together to get things done. So I think that was like really so important. And so after the first run, I didn't have that happen anymore. People were pretty open about what they supported and what they didn't. Now, there was always I'm going to say the staunch, dug-in guard, right? They were never going to like me. They were going to do everything they could to discredit me and make my life difficult, and they did. But it's okay. Sometimes, I had a wise man tell me this once. I didn't know it was true till then. Sometimes having people work against you is the best thing that can happen for you because they're the wrong people with the wrong message, doing the wrong things consistently. So it's like, oh, that's what they're doing. They're against her. Yep, we want to be for her. So,
I had a conversation with somebody recently. I was telling them about what you did in Huntington in terms of your elections. And they said, well, there's a university in Huntington, and that's probably just a place where it's much more, it's not as red as the county. This is what they told me. So I went and I looked up the election returns in 2024 in the city of Huntington. So you won in 28, excuse me, you won in 23 by 8 points. The next year, the city of Huntington voted for the Republican nominee for president, 69%. Now, my question for you is, it seems to me that you can't win and not appeal to a whole lot of those people who support the Republican nominee for president. How did you do that?
So at the end of the day, especially at the local level, it's about delivering and getting results. And so again, it's wise to underpromise and overdeliver. My first campaign, I campaigned on a sewer project. If you're familiar with the phrase long-term control plan, it's a term of art that means your city got sued and you've got an agreed order that you need to separate out your stormwater and sewers. And we had two candidates saying, we're not going to do that. And I was the candidate saying, we have to, and we're going to, and we're not going to kick the can down the road anymore to the next generation. And then I also explained to people what a long-term control plan was. It means we're going to stop dumping raw sewage into the little river that runs through downtown. Wait, we're doing what? And so when you connect with folks in your backyard, you don't have more common ground with people than your zip code and the red blood that flows through your body. And so when you can humanize yourself with them and you can humanize them as you listen to them, then you find that the labels, they don't stick, they don't care as much. They had all sorts of memes about me, and being part of the squad and all these other things that they tried to tag me with. And at the end of the day, people would be like, I don't know, he parts his hair on the side. I don't think he's that radical. So yeah, I mean, people will give you a chance if they think you're sincere and you've got their best interests in heart.
So Tom, I want to ask you this question that has been posed to me by a lot of people. And it starts with kind of in reference to what you said. Well, these are local races. That's different. Somebody couldn't do this for state legislature or for a countywide race or maybe even a bigger race. Now, a lot of the folks here tonight know that the restrictions on independent candidates very different than on Republicans and Democrats. So they need to collect signatures, whereas Republicans and Democrats don't unless they're running for U.S. Senate or for governor. It's in congressional races, it's 8 times. The national, the Senate and the governor signatures. Independents have to collect 8 times the number of signatures that Republicans and Democrats do. If you're running for Congress, you need to get about 4,000 signatures as an independent. If you're a Republican or a Democrat, that number's a little bit smaller at 0. So as the races get bigger, the requirements, the burdensome regulations, restrictions become more difficult. And Indiana is one of only 6 states that has straight ticket voting. The research shows that that really hurts anyone who's not running as a Republican or a Democrat. But Tom, you talked about earlier thinking about running as an independent, even for state legislature. Can you make the case why you think that it is possible for an independent to be successful at that level?
Well, there again, I think it's the person in the community. I mean,
Okay.
I work very hard in District 54 on projects. I made house calls. I'm going to ramble here a minute. When I ran in '96, Frank O'Bannon carried Henry County, carried the state. I beat the Democrat incumbent, which threw the House into a 50-50 split. I wasn't welcome with open arms. When the Republicans, it happened, that second time it happened. First time it happened, they passed a law that ever happened again. The party that elected the highest ranking official would control the speaker's position. They thought Steve Goldsmith was going to be governor. Surprise, surprise, Frank O'Bannon wins. So I meet John Gregg, the Speaker of the House, pats me on the back and said, Tom, I've heard a lot of good things about you, but to be quite honest, you got a big red bullseye on your ass. And you're not going to get anything you can go home and take credit for, so you just sit back and enjoy the ride. Nice to meet you too, Mr. Speaker. Now John Gregg and I became friends in the end, but Frank O'Bannon campaigned on property taxes. The Republicans decided to have a press conference. The leader came to me and said, property taxes, we want you in this press conference. Well, I straightened my tie because I'm with the leader and the Ways and Means guy, and we're in this room, and they just start beating the hell out of Frank O'Bannon, and there was a door right there. So I just started doing a sidestep, and when I got to the door, I got down one flight of steps before they got a hold of me, and they go, where the hell do you think you're going? You don't walk out of a press conference. I said, well, you do if you don't agree with what the guy's saying. The voters of my district elected Frank O'Bannon and elected me, and they expect me to work with that guy, and I'm not going to badmouth him because he's a D and I'm an R. Let me see his program, and then I'll voice it. And I did things like that, played well at home. I think I could have ran as an independent and got elected, but my advisors, the people that gave me the money, are going, no, no, no. But towards the last 4 years I was there, I just wasn't happy. My conscience wasn't agreeing with me. I wasn't sleeping at night, and it was time to come home.
Shawna, did you ever think about running for a higher office as an independent?
It has definitely crossed my mind. However, I'm also pretty pragmatic. I haven't in the past seen a path forward that's successful. And so it's something that it still mulls around in my head, but didn't.
But there needs to be more there for someone like you who's been elected and actually wants to run and win to believe that you have a chance.
Yeah, definitely for me. That's yes.
Yeah.
An organization and money.
Yeah. Well, we're working on it. And we got a pretty good start, I think. I wanted to ask you something. I got a question about freedom of the voters, freedom for people to, be able to pick the candidates that they think is best. I want to ask you about what freedom do you have as an independent elected official that you may not have if you were a member of one of the two parties?
Well, I'm free to tick off everyone. I mean, that's a big part of it is you get a chance. You don't have to be married to an ideology. There's nobody out there who says, well, somebody said this on your behalf. I am 100% responsible for what I say and do, and that's plenty to get me in trouble on my own. And so as an independent, and frankly, again, party structure or not, we need more people in the parties as well to be independent. The supermajority wouldn't be an issue if the caucus had independent thinking and operations within it and didn't have to suffer consequences and punishments. And so at the end of the day, that's woven into the fabric of our nation. And so how do we express that independence in a variety of ways, regardless of the structure, the platform, or the job? That's what I come back to. And people connect with that because, I got advice when I first became a mayor, mayors who smile more get sued less. I don't know if that's true, but I do know that folks often, they'll come up to me and they say, I don't agree with what you did, but I know why you're doing it. And, I can still respect you. Let's go grab a coffee. Right. Because they know who I am and what I'm about.
At this point, we're going to start opening up to questions here. I have one or two more, but we've got cards. So if you have a question for one of our panelists, we've got cards that Orion has. So just raise your hand, and we've got pens too. And it's okay if nobody has a question. That's fine as well. But if you got something, let us know, and we love. Oh, there we go. Got a hand over there. Tom, we talked about Republicans in these red areas. The map that we have of where these independents are winning, I'm going to pass that down to you. Some of you have seen that. It's all over the state. Can you explain to me why that's happening?
No.
Okay.
No, but I think everybody, when you get elected in office, I know when I got elected to the legislature, I'm going to change the world. And you get in there and find out they don't let you change the world. There's 74 of us, and all 74 of you are going to vote yes. And if you got 13 hands there, it says, no, I'm not. And we spend another hour beating on you. Now how many no's do I have? And if it takes another hour. So the independence is there. It's just, you got to have, I can't say that word. You got to have the gumption to stand up for what you believe in. And that gets to be harder and harder. I mean, I've been called to the governor's office on several occasions when I can't imagine being called to the White House and the pressure that they put on our Congress, which in my opinion is missing in action right now. But I just think it's the communities they live in. It's the personality that they're dealing with. And luck, I think.
So you talked about people getting called to the White House, and that made me think of another group of people from Indiana who recently got called to the White House, some of your former colleagues in the Republican caucus. What do you think is really happening? What are they weighing? Do they want to redistrict?
I don't really think they do. I mean, the governor's saying he's waiting on the legislature. The legislative leaders are saying, no, we're going to follow the governor. I really think it's the governor pushing the members. And I told Todd Houston, who's the Republican leader, and I told the young man that replaced me, they needed to go back 30 years and look what happened the last time the Republicans tried to do this in the middle of the session. The Democrats went home. There was a good quote from John Gregg about seeing my shiny white ass jumping that fence down Sanborn, Indiana. But in the end, the Republicans lost seats. And it backfired on them. And I think they have to watch out what they're doing. But I think it's a mistake.
Yeah. Richard, do you see your community becoming more politicized? People talk about, well, local politics have become nationalized. Is that happening?
Well, I think there are definitely people trying to do that. And, you asked about that first election, and that was one of the things that was going on, right? They were trying to tag me to the party they thought I was, even though I was literally from the Republican Party, and my family's Republican legacy goes back to the Whigs. But at the end of the day, you've got to you asked about advice and advice you got. The first advice I got was, don't do this. You'll ruin your future. So then I went and asked somebody else. And that person came back with, well, if you're going to do it, you need to build a bigger machine than they've got. And so that's what we did. And so we had a bigger bullhorn, and we got a better message out, and we got it out in more places, more voters. And that's what campaigns and politics is about with winning office. At the end of the day, you got to step into that challenge, and you can't allow your opponent to define the terms of the debate. You will always lose in that case. You're always fighting on foreign ground at that point. And so if they're trying to nationalize it, you've got to personalize it. And I think that's the case top to bottom. But yes, we are, I think, in stronger currents with that. And I think part of that is we underestimate how subtle it is to get caught up in that ourselves. And so, for instance, a lot of times people will talk about how we just need the right candidate. Well, we also need the right voters. We need people to engage in the process. We need to have more grassroots ownership of issues. And we need them to actually take responsibility for the outcomes. And so I don't want to buy into the notion that we've got to go find the right candidate to be the savior. That's not how this nation's set up or how it succeeds.
Well, And may I break in?
Absolutely.
I think
I don't
I'll-
think I could stop you even if you.
That's right. I'm senior here. I also think that we need to educate the voter what's going on.
Absolutely.
I mean, when people go, Tom, when do you get back from Washington? I don't represent you in Washington. That's, but I tried to eliminate straight party voting, had a hearing. We were getting ready to take a vote. The chairman gets a telephone call, hangs up the phone, and says, well, we're not going to be voting on that today. And then after the meeting, he said, Tom, you had the votes to pass it. It's I'm sure that the Republicans came after both of you the first time you guys ran for re-election because we can't let you get your foot in the door, and that means more of them are going to do it. So
Every time.
yeah, sorry.
No, that's good.
That
Okay.
gave you a chance to read your cards.
Yeah, it was
So-
perfect. You're a pro at this. So this question: how did you and your races navigate voter turnout in general? Did you see increases off the strength of providing another option, especially among younger voters? You want to?
Yeah, so in 2019, we had two referendums by the school on the ballot, and so voter turnout was not an issue for us. It was about getting your message to break through.
What about for you?
I mean, for me, I worked on voter turnout. That was actually one of my family members was like, is this all you're going to talk about is getting people to vote? I'm like, yes, not all, but one of the major things. I'm afraid people will be like, oh, she won before, she's going to win again, especially the third time. I was like, they're happy, but if only the angry people show up, I'm going to lose. So it was definitely one of the major strategies for us. Yeah.
Tom, I think this is a good question for you. If redistricting happens, does that open opportunities for independents?
I believe so. Especially with the way Congress has been operating lately. If you get the right candidate, they have some people to help them and they have some finances. If I was 20 years younger, I would do it. My wife might divorce me, but yeah, I think it does open it up.
Yeah.
I honestly think with the mindset that's going on in Washington, D.C. right now, because they're just missing. You're going to have to get rid of that party affiliation and vote for the person and not the party.
Yeah. This question may be for you, Mayor Strick. What do you say to the statement that in Indiana, the election is won in the primary when independents can't vote in the primaries? In other words, a vote for an independent or third-party candidate is throwing away your vote.
I mean, elections are still decided in the general. That would be my answer to it. And as an independent, I do vote in the primaries. I don't necessarily vote for who I'm going to be running against, but then you have to go out and run the rest of the campaign. And honestly, the primary gives you a chance to. It's like the playoffs. If you're the second game, you get to watch that first one, or second one after you won, you get to watch the next one, and you get a chance of what you're going to be up against. And I actually find that to be quite advantageous.
You want to add to that?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that statement. So I'm a little different than you. I didn't grow up in a party. So I actually am a legitimate independent, never been
Since birth?
affiliated. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if my dad would say that, but I mean, as far as when I turned 18 and can vote.
I mean,
didn't
technically,
vote
we
in
all
primaries.
start as independents. Before
Yeah, that's true. I guess that's true. Yeah,
Pick a side.
Pick a side. Yeah. I turned 18. I didn't do primary voting, and there was some reasoning behind that. But yeah, I also enjoyed watching them do their thing, and what their strengths, weaknesses are, and it helped formulate my strategy a little bit. But I think I always told my folks, I'm going to work twice as hard. I'm probably going to spend twice as much as money, and I'm going to have twice as many volunteers as you. And they were like, okay, yeah, we know. So, yeah.
This question, given that clerks and the Secretary of State control elections in Indiana, do independents need to focus on those races?
Independents need to focus on every race. Absolutely.
Okay. That's pretty succinct. This, I think, is another good question for Tom, our state legislature expert here. Independent or Democrat, should our number one priority be to break the supermajority?
Yes. I think the state would work so much better if they had to reach across the aisle. And if they do this redistricting, they may take care of it themselves.
And I hear that from other Republican legislators and former Republican legislators. They know the supermajority is bad governance.
The current ones won't say that, though.
They not on a mic.
with,
They won't.
Not with a microphone in their mouth.
Okay. I think that's all the questions. Were there any more floating out there? Okay. Will you please thank our panelists? I think we're good. So I want to thank all of you for coming out. If something that you've heard tonight sparks your interest, maybe you want to get involved in our organization or potentially financially support us, you can do that right now. I know you're all going to take your phones out in a second to turn them back on. If you go to independentindiana.org/join, there's a form there, and we will reach out to you within 48 hours. You'll probably hear from Will, actually, because he's the one in charge of that. Independentindiana.org/join. We'd love to have you be a part of what we're doing. But even if you're just curious enough to get our email updates, we'd love to have you participate in that way as well. Thank you so much for coming, and thanks for being a part of trying to make our state a better place.
Hey, Nate,
Yes.
may I say something?
Yes. And now we're going to leave Tom with the last word here.
Well, I'm a has-been, but I'm the Forrest Gump of Indiana. And Forrest Gump of Indiana. I have a book out. You were going to plug it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I promise him. I'm reading his book right now. It's called How Did You Get Here, Tom?
No,
right?
Tom, how did you get
Tom,
here?
how did you get here? This guy, I'm going to give you a little tease. He was actually pen pals with Richard Nixon when Richard Nixon was president and Tom was in high school. And that's not even the craziest story in the book.
I always told stories that people go, you need to put those down. So we did. And anyway.
Look up Tom Saunders' book on Amazon.
It's on Amazon.
It's on Amazon. I just got it 2 weeks ago. And if you want to learn how the state legislature really works or doesn't, I know this is going to shock you. He tells it all.
Can I tell a story?
Yes, we'll close with a final story here.
We were in the middle of a budget negotiation. I knew, I don't know anything. If you wanted something at the courthouse, you walked across the hall. There's a little room that they stuck us in, and you're in that room for 4 hours. It doesn't become pleasant. But anyway, they're arguing about what Frank O'Bannon would accept if we gave him this recommendation. So I excused myself to go to the bathroom. While I was out, I went to the governor's office, asked to see Frank O'Bannon. I said, Governor, would you accept this if we came back and offered that? And he goes, yeah, I'll even come down to your caucus room and tell you. I said, okay. So I go back downstairs. Paul Manwater was the leader. I said, the governor said he'd accept this if we offered it. And he goes, how do you know that? And I said, I asked him. Well, who gave you that authority? And I said, I didn't know I needed that authority. We're here to work together, aren't we? Anyway. He won't come down here. We didn't pass the budget. We came back for a special session. Governor comes down, talks to Republicans. We pass the budget. So all you got to do is talk to people.
Yeah. I think we should applaud that, and that could be our close.